Okay, please.
Okay, so I'm located in Quebec, in Montreal, and Quebec accounts for half of the COVID deaths and cases actually in Canada. So we're not doing very well. The number of cases is going up, not nearly as much as in the United States, but it's still trending in the wrong direction. And it seems that the young people are getting it more and more. So the wave of old people getting the sickness has gone down, but it's the young people who seem to have lost the fear of the virus and are congregating more, going out to bars. The bars are open, and masks are now compulsory since the 8th, and people are wearing 99%, especially in transport where you can't keep the 2-meter distance. Personally, I haven't stayed at home. I've actually gone to work in a nursing home. That's where 80% of the COVID deaths have occurred in Quebec. Again, a very, very high number. There is no more COVID working. It's disappeared. We're still taking all the precautions to avoid its return in a second wave. Everybody wears masks, glasses, all of the security is done. So I don't feel in danger working there. It's just a helping job. So I'm just there to help, to clean the toilets, wash floors, and infect everything that doesn't. That's basically it. I've had 2 COVID tests. I failed both of them. Negative. So,
battery 70%. Connected to GPL-APTOP.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pierre. Dear friends, let's start our meeting. Let me share the screen regarding the agenda of today. Okay, so today in our agenda item, the second one is news and developments regarding the illustration project. Our dear friend Peter Brake will make a presentation. And the second contribution is by our dear friend Hannes Mehrer. It's about a map project. And then dear Rahul Basu will talk about mineral resource governance from a citizen's dividend proposal perspective. Then we have a continuation of our discussions held during the last meeting regarding an international collaboration mechanism. Of course, we would like to hear news from working groups and UBI advocates or UBI networks. Do you think we can continue with this agenda? Would you like to add or modify anything? So we can continue like this. Dear Peter, so the word is yours. I am ready. When you say me, I can share your slides.
Thanks very much, Ali. Welcome everybody. My name's Peter Brake. I work as an accountant here in New Zealand. I've been a member of the BN Outreach Group for several years, focalising modelling of UBI final terms. I've looked at the numbers for the USA, the UBI effects in Russia and some African nations. During this time, I've done some projects looking at the European Union, China, the Philippines, New Zealand, and most recently, India. The work I completed last year showed that India required an income tax and corporate tax of 90% to afford a UBI of 30,000 rupees. which is impossible. You can't have a tax rate of that. It was, however, afforded by a GST rate of 30%. Then of the GDP per capita results in every nation, and at least 70 nations, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, cannot afford a UBI and any other funding measure except a rise in VAT rates. 30 of these nations cannot afford a UBI at all and require assistance, be it an emergency UBI as forwarded by the UN or by what I'm proposing to you today. Ali is kindly sharing screen sharing directly from my Universal Entitlement Facebook page. You are encouraged to search and open this as I'll be speaking directly to the images. It'd be nice if you could get into the site. It's certainly something that I wish to share. On the page, on the Facebook page, I have completed posts for New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Britain, and the USA. The only difference in these versions is the amount of the UBI.
Peter, I'm starting to share your Facebook page.
Your timing is perfect, Ali. All right, so this is the USA version. This is the first picture here. Now, each person receives $290 per week. Now, the $290 was arrived by taking Andrew Yang's freedom dividend of $250, which is funded by a federal VAT tax, and adding a cost of living increase that from raising the VAT rate of his proposed 10% to 30%. This has been estimated because of the other sensible funding measures Andrew has used that I'm not including in my model. So he has a variety of taxes in there. I think they're all very sensible. It's not my agenda, and I want to compare like with like. So I've raised the VAT rate so we can just talk about the VAT as being the mechanism. It's comparing like with every other nation. But if anybody would like me to go back to the $250 version, please speak up during question time, as I'm open to this and wish to support Andrew Yang in any way that I can. Now, this ends up being $15,080 per year. A rise in VAT uses the economy to fund a UBI. Now, this is it is a catch-all phrase. There's a lot involved with the advantages of a VAT compared to income tax or any other funding mechanism. It picks up every spending in the economy. So the VAT rate does use the economy. It's completely correct sentence, but it's loaded with a lot of information there. It's something certainly that we can discuss further. Only the bigger spenders are worse off. With the UBI and income tax exemption and pension increase funded by a VAT rise, models, simulations and surveys confirm over 90% of people are better off. Next slide, thanks, Ali. The carbon tax and dividend work is from the US Congress, who presented this to the President 3 years ago. 17% increase in the fuel price, 90% of the tax shared equally to all people, 70% of people were found to be better off. So that was the results in the US Congress. That was them taking the tallies. That's all their work. 10% given to the People's Controlled World Environment Fund. Now, the details of this have been worked through and presented to the Global Challenges Foundation. So that's available if everyone wants to know or anyone wants to know how that holds together. Next slide, please, Ali. A 1% donation of the UBI from the EU, the US, and China is sufficient to enable every country to afford a UBI. $290 times 1% equals $2.90 per week. The UN Global Wealth Fund, potential funding options. This is Paul Harnett's work, whom I'm a big supporter of, and thanks for the good work, Paul. Absolutely crucial. This is the fund that we're using to support the nations that cannot afford the UBI of themselves. So absolutely critical. The UN is involved. Now, this includes taxes on private land ownership, taxes on international wealth and financial transactions, redirecting existing and military funding, taxes on pollution and extraction of resources. Next slide, please, Ali. Paul was also Hilda's chief supporter, among others, for the UN Global Wealth Fund. Thanks to Hilda for the good work and the valuable connection to the UN. African nation partnered with the UN to ensure a UBI of $7 per week, paying directly into the people's bank accounts in Africa. So those are the illustrations. This is what we're putting forward to people to get the idea across as clearly as what we can. Now, if you could go back to the blurb in the front of this, if you just close the picture down.
Peter, you want me to do something?
Yes, could you close the picture down and go back to the blurb at the front of the Facebook page, the original area.
Okay, here.
Now, what I've written here is the global universal basic income is possible if done this way. This example shows how the USA would be affected. Please share the post and the link below. Now, I am asking everybody to share this, and the link below is crucial for that, because it opens up. Please press the link, Ali, and we'll show people what happens.
Is it visible
This is
now?
perfect. Now we'll leave that there for a second. So the letters are for the Minister of Finance, Social Development, Unemployment, COVID-19, Health and the Environment. Now, what's here is a letter for every nation. Now, those letters are split into 6 situations based on the GDP per capita. So it's the strength of the economy for each nation. Depends on what letter that have been sent. So the first category is the countries that can't afford a UBI. The second are countries that could afford a $1 per day, but probably need assistance. The third is India, who I've done a project for, so they've got their own letter. The fourth are countries that can afford a UBI, but with very high GST or VAT rates. The fifth is the European Union, which have their own situation there. And the final one is countries that can afford a UBI and can afford to donate to assist others. So there's 6 separate letters being shared for each country in there. So the hope is people will read the letters, feel inspired, come in here, highlight this, the link for their country, and send a letter to their minister. Could you go down and open up the one for Austria, since Elmo's here today?
Is
Now,
it
if you
visible?
scroll, that's great, mate. Could you just scroll down a little bit? There's a section in here that I want to explain fully. Here we are. That's just perfect.
Here?
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Now, we have the Freiburg University support. There is work that I'm asking that we get completed. Now, the wording I'm interested in is we are working on the calculations of the lowest VAT rate increase possible that affords a UBI in every European nation. An agreed VAT rate increase would prevent internal trade distortions and strengthen European solidarity. Nations with surpluses from this higher VAT earnings can offer income tax exemptions to their people. Now, I just want to spell this out. The European Union is the complication in this funding method. The common market is it's unheard of anywhere else. It's a brilliant thing. I wish to support it. Now, the country requiring the highest VAT rate to finance a UBI in Europe is Romania. They have a low GDP per capita, meaning low VAT earnings per person. The VAT rate increase is nearly double what is required in Austria. And if each country looks after themselves, there will be many quite different VAT rates throughout Europe, where today they are pretty much aligned at 20% or so. People in Romania, if they have got this very high rate compared to other countries, may go shopping in neighbours' countries to get a cheaper price, lowering the country's VAT earnings and creating a shortfall in their UBI funding or government deficits. It would stuff them, which is a little bit why I've spent so much time working on the European situation. This is the thing that needs to be done sensibly and collectively. If Austria and the rest of Europe uses the same VAT rate as required by Romania, there will be a very large surplus to be applied to tax-free earnings. The countries I have modelled show that the percentage of people having a net benefit rises from 70% for just straight VAT funding of a UBI to over 90%. In New Zealand, it's 94% when an income tax exemption is included. Simply, the people of Europe are better off if they support Romania by incorporating their VAT rate. So hopefully this is clear. In Austria, the VAT rate is larger than what's needed. That means there's a surplus in the government funds. They apply that to, we get this agreed to, they apply this to income tax exemptions. And because of those income tax exemptions, an extra 20% of people, 20 to 25% of people are better off with the UBI and tax exemption because they've used the VAT rate that actually supports Romania. So that's how that hangs together. I have calculated the UBI amount for every member state of the European Union. I'm just waiting for a translator to complete, to be able to complete these. I'm looking for volunteers to do this as my Google Translate refuses to do so. Or is there another option? We could have this in English, but there are varying UBI amounts based on the cost of living. And feel free at question time to ask about the rates for the European Union. The work is done. I do have an answer for that. Now, finally, we need this post to be shared widely. This informs the people. The link to the letters needs to be included in the share as the letters inform the politicians, firstly of your support, secondly of the method, and thirdly, it supports governments or enables governments to apply 1% of the collective basic income to help finance nations that cannot afford a UBI. The letters ask about half the nations to donate this 1%. Everybody from Cuba onwards has got an economy that can afford a UBI and the assistance to help other countries to achieve it. So half the nations, and this gives people the opportunity to show kindness in this time of great need. It's what I think is the best way. As far as I'm concerned, there isn't another way that that we get there with every country. That's all I've got to say. Welcome to have any sharing. Or thanks very much for your help, Ali.
Thank you, Peter. Dear Peter, I know that you developed this project through the email communication. Maybe I know a few friends also were contributing. Any other friends who would like to say anything about or any questions about this presentation? Helmo?
Thank you, Peter. You know, I'm very much on your side regarding the value-added tax approach, although the main objective is always it's so much more expensive for the small earners. This is unfair. This is not treating people equally. And we both know that this is wrong, but that's the main objective. And the second thing is a question, because I want you to say a few words about how or what makes you think that we will have a common approach in the European Union now in a political environment that every country wants to, lock down and separate its measures tackling actual crisis. So my approach would be totally different. So let's have a nation starting basic income and see other nations having its advantages from that. And you have the different approach. I would like to hear you on that, why you chose that.
Sure, thanks, Helmer. Yeah, no, appreciate your support. We're not a very large team on the VAT side of it. Look, I invented a website called myubi.co.nz. The website compares 4 different VAT funding mechanisms for each individual. So you put your personal situation into the website. It shows you what your personal results are from 4 VAT methods. Now, I did this work partly to prove the VAT approach is the correct one or the right one or the most beneficial one. 94% of the people were better off. The income tax models, the very best of them was 75%. I think that's what we need to get through your first point, Helmo. I tried to get one going in the European Union. I talked to the basic income, the head of it there, and said, look, I'll help you. You can use mine for a model. I still think that work needs to be done. At the end, that grudge that people have from the left of the VAT being regressive, they need to understand how it fits together, and the website would bring the information to the people. The second one is the European and why. So we've just had these massive meetings with Germany and France. They've collectively gone to the European Union coffers, printed out some more money, handing it out to Europe as a whole. That's all done collectively, and to me, I probably shouldn't say it's a broken system. You know, we've got unemployment in Spain. Some sections are up to 50, 60% unemployment. This was before COVID. We've got a system that on any given day in England, 50% of the population aren't working. Any given day. If you have a look at that date, the gig economy means that you're doing 2 to 3 days a week. The system is already messed up. It was before we had the problems that we've got now. The European situation is a little bit different to everybody else's, so I'm hopeful that they will keep this together, because quite frankly, a country that puts their hand up for a VAT rate increase without other countries in Europe doing the same with the common market, it's a large VAT increase. So for Austria, if they go ahead, and they're totally capable, they can do it. They can walk next door to Germany. They can literally walk next door to Germany and do their shopping there. So any country that sticks their hands up and raises their VAT rate suffers the lack or the loss of business. Now, international trade isn't affected because there's VAT at the border, but within Europe, there's a large trade distortion. So when I'm saying the collective, if we all do it with the VAT tax, even the changes in the VAT rate is enough to create a distortion that people will use. If they can go next door to buy their things cheaper, they will do so. They move countries to get out of the wealth tax. Imagine what they do if it's just taken a little bite out of the price. That common market is your guy's strength. So I'm supportive of the European. I celebrated when Europe came to this agreement, and yeah, I wish everybody there all the best for it, because I think it's an absolute marvelous thing. And in all this project that I'm doing is.
So thank you for your answer, Peter.
Yeah, no, that's enough.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Helmo. Dear Reinhard, I would like to say something, I guess. By the way, dear Reinhard, I already shared the link of the Facebook page in the chat box. Please.
Yes, thank you. I have seen it, Ali. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, for this very interesting presentation. And I have 3 questions. One is, I don't know whether I got it right. Did you say that the VAT in the European Union system is the same, or did you say this is a precondition to change it? Because as far as I understand, the VAT system differs from country to country at the moment. The second question is, when you calculate based on the gross domestic product, how much of the per capita product do you assume is sort of used and spent on VAT services and products? What is the underlying assumption? I asked this question because when I discussed your ideas with an economist who is involved in financing how UBI can be financed in the UK, he said in the UK only on average 60% of the GDP per capita is spent on products and services where you pay VAT. And the third question is also linked to that, and normally the poorer population spends more of their income on VAT services and products than the upper part of the population. And how does it affect your model, or is this not considered? Thank you.
Excellent questions. Thanks very much, Reinhard. Now, the first one was the VAT rates in Europe. So I have, of course, looked through them. There is some variances. Some countries have lower VAT rates on food. Most of the VAT rates are sitting in around 19 to 21%. So there is a convergence of the VAT rates over time that have made them pretty much similar across the board. It changes nothing within the calculations because we are actually looking at the entire VAT earnings for a country, no matter what their source was, no matter what their rates were. So when you're doing the numbers, you're looking at it at totals. Now, within England, you're saying 60%. That sounds probably about right. So there is no GST or VAT on rent. Now, rent is something that's happening all the time. There's none on interest. There's none on your mortgage payments. So this is the same everywhere. Every country is the same with this. In Europe, I did a weighted average of the rest of the economy, and it came in at 84.5%. So that what that means is all the stuff that normally there's VAT on, it is actually only been taken up 84.5% of the time. So you're actually in a situation where you can, if you shop around, find somebody that doesn't charge VAT for the service or the goods that you're looking for, if they're below a certain threshold. So the thresholds is something that's around the world as well. So 60% sounds about right. The rent takes a fair chunk out of the mix of what's been spent. Interest is certainly the other big item, and 84.5% all other items would probably come out around about the 60%. So I'm comfortable with what you've put forward. Now the poor and the so what happens is similarly how I explained with the USA calculation going from 250 to 290 for the UBI. So what I've done there, and all of my models have been the same, is you start off with a base rate of the UBI based on the cost of living in a country, and as you discover what the VAT rate needs to be, you apply the VAT rate to the cost of living. So because the VAT rate went from 10% to 30% for the US, the amount being paid on the UBI went from 250 to 290. So what that does is that for anybody that survives day to day, the increase in the VAT is offset with the increase in the UBI. And if you're careful with your money and you're wise with your money, the extra $40 a week that you get means that you're in a better position than what you would have been if it wasn't there. So what I'm saying is that when I've done the modeling, 94% of the people are better off. 94% and all of the poor are better off. The slides themselves spell it out. Only the highest spenders are worse off. You can't be worse off unless you're earning more than 100,000. You can't spend enough to be worse off. So all of the poor are supported, and the cost of living is brought into case with the UBI rate that's been set. Hopefully that's clear enough, Reinhard. Good questions. Thank you very much.
Can I just follow up on this question? Because I mean, this economist then calculated and demonstrated when it's 60% that is either the VAT needs to be increased, needs to be very high in order to finance a sort of basic income, or alternatively, the basic income needs to be will be very low. So, or you need to have some additional other taxes in order to finance it. I don't know what your position is on this.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see his calculations on it. But again, we've used the VAT total earnings. So at the end, the economists are very keen on flat income tax rates as being the answer to this, and I'm totally on the other camp, and I've explained why or how that sits together. Now, it is good that you've asked this, because maybe we need to spell out what the advantages from a VAT funding are. So for a start, there's VAT on the UBI itself. The UBI in New Zealand, with the modelling work that I did, the savings rate was retained, which means we've only got a savings rate here of 10%. So 90% of the UBI will be spent, times the 84.5%. Keep rent out of the equation there, because rent's already been paid. They're not going to spend the UBI on rent if they're already paying rent. That's additional spending in the economy. So there is an earn from the UBI itself. So that needs to be taken into consideration. The VAT tax hoovers up all the spending in an economy. Now, there's a lot of spending in the economy which is actually black money. It's cash wages. It's drugs. It's drug money. All of this goes into people's hands. 90% of it is spent. The VAT earnings from all of this is something that adds to the coffer to pay for a UBI. None of the other taxation methods have the advantages that VAT funding have. And because of that, the VAT rate comparatively is less than what it would need to be in income tax or other methods. There's more to it, and I've asked the Freiburg University, and I presented a paper there a year and a half ago now, and at the end of the presentation, I asked them to help explain it, because it is difficult to put it in words. You know, you're talking about the economy and how it sits together, and it's the only thing I asked of them is to help explain to the political left why VAT funding is the right answer, why we have an advantage. And I would have hoped that your economist would have been able to point at that when he was discussing things with you, Reinhard.
Peter, there's a much more, juicy argument for the VAT or the general service tax. I would not try to win the discussion with numbers. I think the biggest advantage is that you don't divide the society as you would always do alongside an income tax, in those who pay into the society and those who get out of the society something. No matter how you design any form of income tax, you always find this division. And there is only one source of tax that everybody that would get a UBI is also contributing. And that is what's linked to his or her consumption. And that's making the whole thing very integrative, that everybody who will get a universal basic income is also rightfully contributing to it. So that's an act of sovereignty. You don't, so it's a more sovereign way of paying your tax. You pay your tax by consuming. It is not deducted from your income and you cannot do anything about it. So to make a long story short, that would be the Enno Schmidt approach.
Thanks, Elmer. Yeah, absolutely. To me, the income tax models that I've looked at, Ut Fischer's paper for Germany showed that more than 50% of the people were net contributors to a UBI in Germany. Absolutely horrifying. The idea that we're championing a basic income that is making more people poorer than what's making richer. I know it's the more needed, but the middle classes don't need a good kicking. You know, they need support and the same as everybody else. We have the working poor in this country. You work every day. You don't save a dollar. You don't have any money for anything that goes wrong at the end of the week. We need to have a UBI that is supportive to the vast majority of the people. Us as people that are affording this idea.
Yeah, but Peter, we still have to convince, for instance, Gerdur, who is with us here today, that a value-added tax model does not disadvantage the majority. We have to make this point straight. So we have to do our home exercise.
Again, if anyone is interested, the myubi.co.nz website.
Peter, can you write to the
put
chat
your
box?
own income into it. You'll see that what your results would be. It's comparable. You can put your own information in. It's accurate. The models show it. The surveys show it. Everything agrees. I'm not wrong with what I'm saying. Please check out this stuff. VAT modeling proves what we're saying. It's proved. I'm not making it up. So please look, do your homework. There's links in the letters that show the results.
Thank you, Peter. I guess we better continue with this next agenda item. But if there are other questions, we can continue at the end of our session. Because I know few friends has limited time to join today's labor. Next item is by our dear friend Hannes Meher. Did I spell correctly, Hannes? I hope. Please, word is yours.
Hi everybody. I'm gonna present something about a UBI map project that Ali mentioned during the last meeting already. And I'm going to present a few slides. This is not going to take more than, let's say, 6 minutes. Then we have a few minutes for questions. And then, so the overall thing shouldn't take longer than 10 minutes. Let's do this here. Can you all see my screen now? I hope so. Yeah,
right
there's
now we can see.
some nodding. Okay, cool. There we go. So yeah, the idea is a global, there we go. A global map of UBI advocates on the one hand and UBI networks. So this is an idea to build some infrastructure in order to support communication, interaction, and collaboration. And just as a side note, you see this in the last line, all data that we are collecting in this project will be openly available. So this is not data that we keep to ourselves or anything. This is just something that we collect, that we work on, and then we put out so that people can use it. The idea is the following, that there'll be a global map of UBI advocates and UBI networks. So UBI advocates would be individuals, whereas UBI networks would be already existing associations or working groups of parties. That could be any sort of network. The goal is that we have an overview of what's going on concerning UBI activities worldwide, so that we see in which country, in which region, maybe in which city even, we have some network, and if we go there, we can contact them directly. As I said before, I would summarize this as supporting interaction between UBI advocates. How do we do this? So this is the question of how we implement this. Would be an idea to use Google Maps. That would be, I think, like the best idea concerning compatibility issues, or OpenStreetMap. Some arguments in favor of that would be that it's open source, something we can discuss at the end. And concerning the structure, we thought that a two-layer approach would be good, so that we have one separate map, one map for UBI advocates, so this is for individuals, and another one for UBI networks. And as an example, I'll describe such a map in more detail. So this is the next slide. Whoops. Yeah, we saw UBI networks. This is something that we're going to start with. For the UBI advocates that you see below here, there might be some privacy issue if we put all like some data of individuals online, obviously only when they agreed to putting their data online. So this, because this is a little bit more complicated, we're going to start with UBI networks, where putting some address of some meeting room or so something like that online shouldn't be that much of an issue. Something that I envisioned was to use OpenStreetMap, for example, and then here I've just made 2 exemplary markers, or I've put them down already. One is for the Netzwerk Grundeinkommen, so that's the basic income network in Germany, in this case located in Berlin. And the other one is the Citizens Income, I think also network in Turkey. So that's the one that Ali is associated with, and that would be in Istanbul. And so what we're trying to do is to collect some data with your help, and then transform this data in markers such as this one. And then on this map, we would have the ability to, for example, click on this marker and get additional information, such as an URL, so the web link to their websites, or even an email address or something, so that they can easily be contacted. And yeah, so basically that's the idea. And one question that remains is how we are collecting data. One suggestion I'm having is to use Google Forms. And I've just put out some suggestions of the information we could collect. There would be, for example, starting with the name of the UBI organization, its location, just the country, then at a lower level of abstraction, the city, possibly also the address, and then the URL, so that this is the information that appears once you click the marker. And I've noted here on the right, you're invited to fill in the form. This is only a draft, so the form is not ready yet. But if you're happy with this approach, we can discuss what kind of information should be provided, or there should be a possibility to provide this information, and then which information should be incorporated in the map. And I think that's actually it. Very brief, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your ideas and suggestions. Thank you.
Any friends who would like to contribute, or maybe dear Peter would like to say something? He already shared something in the chat box. Dear Peter Knight.
Okay. Yeah, I shared in the chat box a link to a map. I've done this map both for my Dartmouth class of 1962 classmates, and I've done one for UBI, well, not UBI, Sufficiency for Sustainability Network Associates, they're called. It's very easy to do. It does expose certain amount of information. As we had a standard bio, which is available on another page, and I'll put it up too. But if you go to these, you can see where they're clusters. Where if you click on the, I put the link on in the thing, and if you see what London, for example, you click in London, you'll see that there's the George Papa Christos in the city of London and his email. So that much information is revealed. We have a way of doing this where you get a lot more information, which you can circulate a so-called KML file to members of the network that would then provide, you know, telephone numbers and things like that. I can show an example of what that looks like. We do that for my Dartmouth classmates. We have just, you can't see their actual physical address, just their city you don't see their email, you just see their name. You don't know their spouse name, any of that. But if you get the little KML files that can be generated by this program, then you can see as much information. You can put as many columns of information as you want. And then when you click on Google Earth on one of these little markers, you will actually get all the information that they care to reveal. But that would not, we call the open access map one like this, similar to the one that we did for the Sufficiency for Sustainability Network members or associates. You can do it with as little information or as much in an open version, and in a closed version where you give the actual little files to all the people who are actually members of the network, then they can get much more detail. And they just upload these little files into Google Earth Pro, which is free from Google. And it's just like a file. It's open, you know, and you click on file on your computer where you down these little files. They're like 50 kilobits and they huge amounts of information. And then they appears your globe comes up with a lot of markers on it.
Thanks, Peter. I think that's a good idea. We just wanted to make this as accessible as possible. So although like a KML format might be a good idea, it's not easily accessible for everybody to like deal with format, and maybe just using a Google form would like facilitate the whole thing to just fill in the data you want to provide, either of yourself or the network you're talking about. And then we transform that into something that shows up on the map.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I've done using Easy Map Maker. It's just a simple thing. Unfortunately, it used to be free for up to 300 items or 600. Now they're charging $29 a month, but I make that as a contribution to Dartmouth, and I use it also for so there. It's open. You can put it up on a website, and then take a look at the link that I put, and it just pops up.
Yeah.
Zoom in on it on a website. It's more or less what you're suggesting.
Yeah, that's great. I'll definitely have a look. The question would just be for all the others who are now present, whether we could go over these questions, just 5 or 6 I had here, and see whether you had additional things that you wanted to add, or whether this is sufficient and we should start with this. Does that work? Yeah, okay, cool. I'll just show my screen then again. I'm just having the side open that Peter just suggested, and then up here is the question. So the first one would be the name of the UBI organization. We just talked about this. Second one is location, the country, location, the city, address, which is optional. Please insert your URL. So that's the web link. And then in one sentence, the purpose of the UBI organization. So what exactly is it? What does it do? I think this is very concise. If you have any other suggestions, please let me know now or via email. I'm going to put my email in the chat box here. Thank you.
Any other friends who would like to contribute? I cannot see any. Okay, I would like to say a few words.
Actually share my screen to show you this thing in case you didn't want to go it. Let's see if you can allow me to share my screen.
Sure. Please.
Let's see. Which share? Yeah. Okay, share. So are you seeing this now? So if you go to any, this could be an individual or an organization, you just zoom in on it and then click on it, and you see presumably that's what you're proposing, something like this. So you can just move around the world. This is not Google Earth, but it's something called Easy Map Maker, and it works in a similar fashion. So that's all. I assume that's something like what you want to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And this is also Google Maps based, so maybe that's a good idea. Yeah, we'll see. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, let me unshare, stop share, okay.
Thank you, Peter. Dear Ingun, please.
Yes, thank you for the very, very good work. And I was just wondering, maybe the last question, if we should add also supportive organizations, because typically the organizations that are for UBI, like the BN network in every country, will be there. But we also have lots of organizations that we are working to make commitment to work for UBI. So maybe, but it would be useful to see who are the main BN networks in the country, and also supportive organizations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. That's something that Ali and I talked about it earlier. I want to give one example to support this, which is I'm, for example, not only a member of the non-partisan network in Germany, which deals with UBI, but also of the Green Party in Germany. The Green Party in itself is not in favor, so not in favor of the basic income, but there's a working group, which I'm a member of, which is fighting for basic income. So I would put in that working group. We have a web presence and we have an email address and everything, but also state then in the small print that this is not the whole party which is supporting this. And this might apply to other associations. So yeah, everything that goes in the direction of UBI, possibly even against UBI, if that is happening somewhere, then we can put that on the map. Thank you.
Again, if I can share, let me show you what Google Earth looks like with the same system. Let's see, share screen, share. Okay, so here are living graduates in my class, and as you go on somebody's name then, and now this provides much more information than the open access map. It provides name of the spouse, a physical street address, telephone number, and email, and example. So this is just simply using Google Earth, but with KML files.
But this is only for the members.
Huh?
This is only for the members, right?
These are members of, those are graduates of Dartmouth College in the class of 1962 who happen to be alive, and they have an email address. But I mean, you can do that for, you can make these files, and I'm sure he knows how to do. You can make it for any set of data, and just geolocate them. You make these little KML files, and then you upload them into Google Earth, and you populate the globe with your markers. You can choose the type of marker here. This one's a little green pin. There's me. So, you know, you can zoom right into my building. I mean, in Google Earth, if you really want to know where I live. And then the data's there. It's really quite nice. So these are, you can make these little files in this easy map maker, and since I already subscribe to it, I'd be happy to make the files for you if you provide a spreadsheet with the columns and spaces. I could make such a thing and do it for you for nothing.
That'd be great, Peter. Yeah, I think we just have to discuss afterwards whether we're going to do this via Google Forms, and then I would provide you with the Excel spreadsheet.
Yep, fine.
Great, cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you, dear friends. I would like to say a few words about this project. In fact, Hannes mentioned about this project maybe 6-7 months ago. But it was mostly for UBI advocates, and for Germany, Switzerland, UK, and Austria, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. Anyhow, but it might be difficult to deal with the advocates because of these personal data issues. But with the networks, it's much more easy. The biggest importance, I guess, of this project is that it will be a infrastructure project. And based on this, superstructure projects can be developed. For example, the working group number 1, they prepared a letter and sent to the Secretary General of the United Nations. If you had something like this, it would be much more easy to finalize this letter and finalize the signatures from different organizations. So it will be allowing us to develop many superstructure projects. And at the end of the day, all the data will be open to everybody. So I guess it will be a great one. Thank you, Hannes.
Thank you.
Would you like to add anything else?
I think that's it from my side. Thanks everybody, and we'll send around a link with the Google form soon. And if you could, first of all, fill that out for the organization that you're affiliated with, and second of all, also distribute it to people who you think might be able to also give us some more data, then we're all happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannes. Dear friends, let me share the agenda once again. So we finished with number 3, item number 3. So number 4, it is a presentation by dear Rahul Basu, and the name of the presentation is Mineral Resource Governance from a Citizens Dividend Proposal Perspective. Dear Rahul, I can't see you at the moment. Oh, here you are. Yeah, please.
Okay. Thanks a ton, Ali. Let me just share my screen. Get this going. Okay, so I want to talk about a little opportunity that's come up with minerals, which gives us all an opportunity to advocate for a citizen's dividend right across the world. So let me just quickly go through the presentation, and then we can do some questions later. So the underlying premise is that everybody in the planet actually is an owner of minerals. And this, if you think about it, like, we talk about Alaska as this permanent fund dividend as the great example of universal basic income. The same principle can apply to minerals all over the world, and not just and more specifically where a fund already exists. There is even an opportunity to ask for a dividend to be paid out from that fund, like in Norway or Nigeria. But I'm just going to talk about a specific opportunity that's open right now. So the UNEP, this is the United Nations Environment Program. They have 2 years back, they have a United Nations Environment Assembly that passed a resolution on mineral resource governance. And now they've opened a consultation on this, and that's open till about a month from now. 28th of August is the last date. And they're having a bunch of webinar consultations alongside. You can send in emails, or you can attend these webinars and sort of propose how you think mineral resource governance should happen. So let me just explain how we are thinking about this issue. So the first question is, who actually owns minerals? And this is just a quick summary of how it works. So there is a certain set of global ownership of minerals, which are basically in areas not under any particular state. So the deep oceans, which are beyond territorial boundaries, they are considered the common heritage of mankind. Everybody on the planet has a share in that. Then you have things like Antarctica and the moon and asteroids. And while it sounds strange, but like mining is being predicted on the moon within 5 years. So all of these, everybody on the planet is an owner. Then coming to territorial areas, in most nations, the nation itself is the owner of the minerals, but there are some exceptions, and I'll talk about it. And very specifically, in some countries, especially the US is the big example, the landowner is the owner of the minerals below the land. But when it's in the ocean, it's almost always the nation. Then there's also some variations in certain places, like in India, the state, the sub-national entity is the owner of the minerals. That's true, I know, in Australia and Canada, and probably in other places I don't know about. Again, when there are indigenous people and they have certain kinds of sovereignty rights, they also tend to own minerals. This is again true, US, Canada, India, I know about. And then, of course, we talked about landowners in the US as well as pockets in India. Now, we talked about mineral ownership, but there is another concept in law, and where basically minerals are owned. We are basically inheritors of these minerals because none of us have created minerals. So we have an obligation to ensure our future generations inherit the minerals or their value. And this applies to all the levels above, individual landowners. In UK and common law countries, this is called the public trust doctrine. In civil law countries like most of Europe, it's called public domain. And when we're talking about global sort of deep sea mining and things like that, that's called the common heritage of mankind, or should be called humankind. So we explain this very simply in 5 principles. So let me just quickly explain the core idea. The first principle is that minerals are owned by states on behalf of the people. Minerals are owned by the state as a trustee on behalf of the people and especially future generations. The second principle is that since we have inherited the minerals, we must make sure future generations inherit either the minerals or their value. If we decide to extract the minerals, and this is a choice, if we do decide to extract the minerals, we must make sure we get the full value of the mineral, which is what we can sell the mineral for minus what it costs to extract, including a profit for the extractor. Fourth, whatever we receive from selling our minerals, we must put into a future generations fund, like Norway is the great example, so that future generations will not inherit the minerals, but they inherit the fund instead. And fifth is that since we own the minerals, we own the fund created from the minerals, so we own the income from the fund, distributed equally to everybody as a citizen's dividend or a universal basic income. It may not reach a basic income level, but it would be universal for everybody. So 5 simple principles. States own minerals as trustees. We have to ensure future generations inherit either the minerals or their value. Make sure you get the full value of the mineral, save everything you receive for future generations, and the income distribute to everybody equally as owners. Future generations inherit the fund and can do the same. So just the 2 big ideas in this. One is the idea of intergenerational equity. What we inherit, we must pass on. The second big idea is when we are extracting minerals, we're effectively converting the mineral into wealth of another time. Now, this is quite important because this is sort of a little bit of an empirical analysis, an optimistic empirical analysis. If we inherited $100 or rupees of minerals, and this is a global analysis based largely on IMF data, straight upfront, 10% is lost to extractors. This is extremely optimistic. The data actually shows that we're probably losing more than half of the value. So what we're getting is 90. Then of that 90, what is happening is most of it is a large chunk is getting consumed. It's being, we get royalties, we call it revenue or a tax, and you spend it. Then what is saved, a good chunk of that itself is wasted. IMF estimates about half of public investment is wasted. So future generations will inherit about maybe $9 or $10 of useful investments, plus financial assets like Norway's fund and things like that, another $31, $32. So basically 100 in the current system is becoming about $40. $60 are being lost to future generations and actually to everybody in common, because we all owned it in common, and some of it has got consumed and some of it has got captured by extractors and rent seekers of various kinds. So if we implement the principles that we are arguing for, basically zero loss, save everything and share everything, we believe it's a massive improvement in the public finance management and, from an economic standpoint. The first thing is, because the capital base is not declining, capital is maintained, this is fundamentally a sustainable system. Because if capital is constantly declining, at some point capital becomes zero, and sort of that, like you have Nauru as a great example. They had phosphates, they took out all the phosphates, they created a fund, they mismanaged the fund. Today they don't have phosphates or money. So this makes the economy sustainable. The second is because we're saving, instead of 40, we're saving 100, there's a higher savings rate in the economy, which will create growth. The fund we're suggesting is invested in low-cost mutual funds like, Vanguard Mutual Fund. And when you go into the investment management theory, it's very hard to beat this rate of return. So this will give you a very high rate of return or unbeatable rates of return, not very high necessarily. The fourth is, of course, the citizen dividend is a universal basic income. Everybody will get it at the global level and probably at the national level. The fifth is because not much money is coming into the government. All the money from extraction is going into the fund and then as a dividend. Governments will have to improve the way they, sort of raise taxes and spend the money, because otherwise people will not be willing to spend, pay taxes. This should improve the quality of governance, especially in countries with authoritarian governments and are just wasting money, in building monuments and things like that. Sixth is it reduces the increase in inequality, because if you think what's happened is you started with 100 and now left with 40, which is jointly owned. The remaining 60 has been captured by certain people. You can think of it as a negative basic income. What was owned by everybody has paid a per head tax, and a few people have become rich. So increase in inequality is reduced in this manner. And it's obviously a fair kind of a system. Now, this is not entirely pie in the sky kind of a thing. In India's national mineral policy, we've got two very key statements. I won't read through it, but the first one really encapsulates the first two principles of what I was talking about. The third is that state governments as the owners will try to get zero loss. And we've also, at the national level, through judicial action, got a Goa Iron Ore Permanent Fund intended to be a future generations fund, which is a global precedent. So what's left is the citizens' dividend, which we believe is actually, when you work through the logic, is very obvious and should naturally flow through, though only Alaska actually has such citizens' dividend. Natural resource funds, there are over 50 of them already in the world. Goa is not in the map here, but this was done in 2016. And there's no reason that we cannot go to each one of these funds or to the government controlling them and saying that don't use the income from the fund in your budget, just use this to pay out a citizen's dividend because we're all equal owners. And it's a very straightforward argument to make in any of the countries where something like this exists. And the money exists, the income exists, just has to change from going to the budget to going to the actual owners of this income. This idea also has analogies with carbon tax plus a future generations fund plus a dividend. Paul Harnett spoke about this 2 or 3 sessions ago. And we have a webinar actually in a couple of days by World Basic Income on this idea of carbon charge going into a fund, because carbon is actually a capital kind of a thing. Carbon stays in the environment for hundreds of years. We're not sure how many hundreds of years, but it stays in the environment for hundreds of years. So it's a little bit of a capital kind of a structure. So there's a carbon charge plus a fund plus a dividend. Similarly, Henry George has this very powerful idea of a land value tax, and Neo Georgists have converted this into a land value tax plus dividend. And in most countries with mobile telephony, the mobile companies are paying the government a spectrum charge for the use of the commons of radio waves, and there's no reason that charge cannot simply be paid out to everybody as a dividend. So in general, this is a structure of a commons. Where it is in capital in nature, you create a fund. Where it is income in nature, you directly pay out the dividend. And the fund, if it's capital in nature, then the income goes out as a dividend. Now let me get into the UNEP consultation. The UNEP has basically started this consultation on mineral resource governance, and Goa Foundation in the future the Goa Foundation has sent in a detailed representation already. And based on that, we have created a sign-on letter where any of you as organizations or as individuals could sign on, or you could send your own representation. You might have other things to add into this, or reduce some of the things we've asked about. And the information is available here. I'll share the file on the this presentation after this so that you can all have it. The deadline for this is 28th of August. Second, there is a series of webinars, consultation webinars, and the schedule is on the next slide. But if you are joining the webinar, because we'd like the voices from all over the world to make the same demand, so UNEP feels that it's not just Goa Foundation, one entity in one corner of the world asking for this. And the broad idea of what we're asking for, if you can actually read it out aloud on the webinar, if you do decide to join the webinar, we'd really appreciate voices from all over the world supporting this. This is the list of consultation webinars. The ones in gray have already happened, unfortunately. North America does not seem to be included, and you can actually, I would suggest writing into UNEP and asking them why North America has not been included. The link at the top will pop up, and you can register for the webinars in your own areas. But there are still going to be regional webinars and then a global webinar. So there are still more, we have more opportunities to influence this entire process. Other than this, we have one other advocacy campaign specifically on deep sea mining, because it looks like mining might start very soon, or the licenses might take place. What's going on is very, very poor, badly structured. It's going to be very small amounts received for our common inheritance, and biodiversity will be damaged. Our main demand is for a moratorium on deep sea mining. But if mining does take place, and it's right now the way it's structured, it's almost impossible to stop it. If it does take place, we do demand that this be dealt with as a global commons, and where we have a global sovereign wealth fund, and the income from the global sovereign wealth fund be paid out, whatever it is, as the global citizens' dividend to pretty much everybody on the planet. And for all of you out here, we can also have in-country campaigns, just like we've started in India. There's a campaign going on in Guyana. In Portugal, along with Roberto Merrill, who's also part of this group, we've actually had a letter in an article in one of the leading newspapers out there making this demand. And this can be in any country, we can make this kind of a demand. And it follows a fairly obvious kind of a logic to it. And as I mentioned, any place where there is already a sovereign wealth fund, it's a pretty easy thing to make this demand that we should have this kind of a dividend instead of using the money in the budget. And I'm really, we're very happy to help if anybody wants to start any of these campaigns in your own countries or your own, sort of more smaller areas, depending on the ownership structure. Who we are, we're Goa Foundation. We're an environmental non-profit in Goa. We've stumbled upon this in our advocacy. We see the applicability across the planet for something like this. The future we need is what we've set up as a global movement to make this idea of intergenerational equity core to everything in civilization, starting with minerals. And these are some of the campaigns we already have. Actually, the UNEP campaign, I should add on to this. and we plan in a longer period a center for implementing intergenerational equity to get into some of the more academic and research-based kinds of things. There's a whole bunch of links on reading and multimedia and things you can do. And if you want to engage with the future we need itself, one is if you start your own campaign, or if you want to work directly with us and help us, we need to be able to communicate this idea in many different ways. And we really need some writers as well as help on the IT side. And over time, we need to convert this into training material so that people on the ground in different countries, UBI already has a large set of stuff, but this is different from UBI in a little way. And there are many other opportunities for various kinds of academic research that will come up. And of course, if you would like to donate, please. So let me just stop here. And I can see there are a whole variety of questions that have come up. So let me just stop sharing my screen, and I guess we can take questions.
Dear Raul, thank you very much. Barb is raising her hand. Dear Barb. Okay.
Yeah, hi, Rahul. Thank you so much for that. And it's really good to see that things are happening around this, and that the UN is taking it seriously. I guess the first thing that came to mind in my mind, I know that there are a lot of struggles going on in the US where Native Americans have managed to stop mineral extraction, through the courts, using the treaties. And I guess my question is well, how to put this? Could there be some kind of reward for not using the minerals? Okay, if you see what I mean, because that's all, in terms of land, and I always wonder, like, whether, say, like the Alaska Permanent Fund, whether that makes people less likely to join environmental causes. I'm sure you must have thought about this at some point.
Yeah, and so in fact, the US is a very interesting example. Most people don't know that in Alaska, actually what happened when Alaska became a state is that the state government got a big chunk of land, but actually the native peoples out there also got a big chunk of land, and they set up Alaskan Native Corporation. There are 17 sort of regional ones, and there are some over 100 village level corporations who actually own these rights to the subsoil minerals. And one of the biggest advocates for further extraction in Alaska is the biggest Alaskan Native Corporation. So, I mean, you have these conflicts. On the other side, you have the Cree Nation, in, I forget which state it is, who instead of extracting minerals, they built a casino, and the income from the casino they pay out as a dividend. This is a very good example of a universal basic income from a different kind of a source. Our basic principle is that future generations have to inherit either the minerals or its value. Okay. And when you think about it, the question is, can you ensure that you get the full value of the mineral and save that value in a fund or some other way in perpetuity? And I'm guessing a lot of people will say, maybe that's a lot harder than just leaving it in the ground, because it's much harder to steal minerals when it is in the ground than when it's as a fund, because you've got all these, Bernie Madoff and all these other crazy guys trying to separate a rich person from their wealth. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will say that, it's safer in the ground. But I think we need to let people decide it for themselves rather than prescribing it.
Sure. I just was wondering, like, what the kind of incentive would be, like, like as with the indigenous population in Alaska, who is trying to get their minerals extracted. Again, it's just like two really huge cases were just won in the US based on treaties, which, one stopped a pipeline and then the other gave about a third of Oklahoma to the tribe that it should have been with all this time. Okay. So it's just, no, it's just an interesting question that, I mean, we can't finish the discussion now. But.
Let me just give you one more example. IMF did a recent study on Norway, where basically what's happened is the income from the fund going into the budget has resulted in over promises on pensions and government expenses in the future. And the IMF has estimated that Norway requires a 4% fiscal consolidation just to ensure that the government, which has a positive net worth today, ends up at a zero net worth.
Oh.
And if they have to maintain the net worth at what they are today, they have to have a 10% of GDP fiscal consolidation. So everybody thinks Norway has done a great job, but if Norway has to just stay as wealthy as they are today, they have to reduce expenses from the government to the extent of 10% of GDP. And that's because they don't see what's going on. When they realize what's going on, it's a very different picture. So, I mean, it's something that you have to work through a little bit through the analysis.
Okay, well, I look forward to getting the presentation and having a closer look at it. Thank you.
Reinhard, please.
Yes, thank you. I have a very similar question to Barb, because I'm a bit concerned that this analysis is very much from an economic perspective. And I don't think that you can ever predict future use of minerals or other resources. So ideally, I mean, obviously that is the ideal situation. You would not like to use any of them because you cannot predict what, for instance, petrol or other minerals will be used in the future. I mean, the most extreme, it's not a mineral example, but a species example. Economically, it makes sense to turn animals and plant species into money, because if you calculate it based on the sort of return on the money, the dividend, you probably get a higher return than the reproductive rate of the animals or the plant species. But I think that cannot be what we are aiming for. And I think it's quite similar with mineral resources. We don't know what the future use could be. So I don't know. I mean, it's probably a dilemma which cannot be resolved, but just as a concern.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely, it's a concern worth raising. But you know, at the end of the day, we can't stop using minerals today. I mean, we're all using minerals just to be on this Zoom call. So, and if that mineral gets extracted, then this is what we think should happen. But sure enough, if you don't extract the mineral, you also met intergenerational equity, and that's absolutely fine.
Thank you, Hope. And also John Mills. Dear John, you're here.
Thanks, Ali. My biggest concern, living in Canada, we've got the oil sands. In order to rehabilitate the mess that extracting that oil has created is going to cost an absolute enormous amount of time and horrendous amounts of money. And I think that, you know, even before we distribute the proceeds sort of thing, we have to make sure that the extraction process ends up at the bottom end as clean as can be. And that's something that I think hasn't been addressed properly ever.
Yeah. No, I haven't got into the entire structure out here, John, because, I mean, we have looked at we are an environmental NGO, so I mean, we look very hard at the environment. If you get into sort of the larger statements, it's all there. Let me respond. I mean, let me just explain how we're looking at the environment. We're saying that first you need to set aside no-go areas. So oil sands actually should have been a no-go area in the first place. It's just a ridiculous kind of a thing to be extracting. Then you have to, you know, area-wise caps. Again, I know in the oil sands you have multiple mines, and then it's hard to pinpoint who's responsible and things like that. So you need to have overall, you know, area-wise environmental caps. Then you have to, under the precautionary principle, also limit it based on things like, you know, in the Netherlands, over-extraction of gas has led to land subsidence and earthquakes. Again, you have to have limits on that. And then you get into the polluter pay thing side, where you want to say you want to avoid. If you cannot avoid, you want to you know, mitigate. If you can't mitigate, you want to offset, and then finally you pay money. So that's one set of things. The second set of things I should just mention is when we say zero loss, if you think about what's happened in Alberta, is basically you all have got peanuts for the oil sands from the oil companies, and that money has been spent. It's been, frittered away. So what you started off in Alberta was with pristine land with oil sands. What you've now got is a mess and no oil, and the future generations basically have a cleanup bill. If you think as a trustee, the responsibility of a trustee, which all of us are, is to make good any loss. So to your point, if we get some money from the oil in future, we have to use that first to clean up and to make good any other loss. Then it goes into the fund. And if there's any income from the fund, again, that goes first towards making good any loss. And only after that is any income distributable.
Dear Rahul?
Yeah.
Okay, here you are. Dear Rahul, I guess you mentioned about this, but will you going to be sharing your presentation? If you think it's a possibility, you can send to the email group so that our friends can utilize it. Because I understand that you modified your original presentation and you made a presentation from UBI perspective. So it is an original one, I guess.
Yeah, I made this specifically for this thing, and I will share it on the email. I've already shared it on the group.
That's great. That will be great. Any other friends?
I see Ingun has raised a hand. Bob has also.
They are congratulating you, just clapping.
Oh, thanks. But please sign up. I mean, it's important. This is a global bit of advocacy, and it will be really good to get a global demand for citizens' dividend. We need to get this idea into everybody's head. It's just a different way to get at it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rahul. When you first wrote about this issue, it was maybe not directly related to the UBI, but now it is much more connected to the UBI discussions. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. So no more hands. Okay, we are finished with this agenda item 2. Can we continue to our next item? Okay, I will try to share something. Dear friends, remember last time we start discussing how we can have an international collaboration mechanism from the activism perspective, especially regarding this COVID period is also an interesting period. So how we can utilize the atmosphere as much as possible, and how we can maximize our media coverage, or how we can maximize public awareness in different corners of the world, etc. So there is one thing I would like to discuss, which is, let me share in the screen. Okay. You do remember last time I mentioned about the project. It is an ongoing project in EU area, European Union area. I was participating, in the framework of the UBI since 2 years to this, contributing to this project. It's a signature collection campaign, and it will be in 27 countries, in all European countries. Do you think, or should we, or can we start an internationally synchronized national signature collection campaign? I mean, it should be synchronized internationally, and also specially synchronized with this ECI UBI campaign. So which means that on 25th of September, it can start, and it may continue for 1 year. We can do this with our UBI networks with almost zero cost, using the web-based tools like change.org or Facebook share, whatever. But I think it might be interesting because till now I talk with friends from India, Brazil, Chile, and Iceland, and also Italy. Italy is a part of this ECI campaign, but it might be very interesting. I mean, during this pandemic period, in all or in as many possible countries, as many countries as possible, if you can have synchronized something, it might be interesting. I would like to hear your feelings about this. So the question is, can we or should we start an internationally synchronized national signature collection campaign? By the way, I have to make it clear that it's not a global UBI issue. It's again at national levels, but just to have these efforts in a synchronized way. Thank you. That's all I will say. Any friends would like to say anything, or maybe Dear Hamo?
Well, we're in a way doing that because we're already in the campaign phase of a national collection effort. There are, of course, economies of scale. If you campaign for 2 campaigns, you don't have double the effort, but double the signatures. Usually, people who are in favor of a UBI nationally are also in favor of a UBI globally. So that makes total sense. And I'm almost sorry to say that we have pre-run your ideas, so it's already going on here. Yeah.
Dear Helmo, I think there's a misunderstanding. I'm sorry. I know that you have ongoing campaigns, and during the last ECI coordination team meeting, I mentioned that do you mind if other countries do have similar campaigns in their own countries, so that it might create some synergy all around the world? And so you are already there, you are already working. I'm proposing this. I'm proposing this to the countries who are not European Union members. I mean, but with a similar content.
Yeah, I think it's more or less the general approach of our, of BN and of UBIE. So to raise awareness in the population and in politics for our so beloved topic. So doing that via citizens' initiatives is one, and I think a very profound way, but just one. So social media is another, doing interviews with classical media is a third one, and putting it on university panels and stuff like that. So actually, it's a big yes, Ali.
Thank you, Hamo. Dear John?
I think it's a great idea too. I'm just wondering if there's, Europe obviously has a goal in mind. And if Canada started a signature campaign, is there any thought other than collecting massive amounts of names? What's the point?
Dear John, we don't have to collect the names. For example, I talk with Sarat and Shohabana from India. They are very positive. And Bruno is here. If she can contribute, she's from Brazil and she's also positive. And Gabriela, she left the meeting 15 minutes before, early. She's from Chile. And Gerder, is she here? Okay, Gerder is positive too. The idea is to create public awareness and to show big numbers of people are for UBI. So when I talk with my friends, with the coordination team of the ECI, when I mentioned them that you will have this campaign for 27 countries, if there's a similar campaign in other countries, do you mind this? They said it will be good, but we cannot allocate any resources to these campaigns. I said, no, nobody will allocate resources from one country to the other one. Every country will solve herself. For example, in our case, we are planning to do it in Facebook, and we don't want to collect people's data, and we would like to increase the number of likes. Why we don't want? Because we don't, it's very difficult to handle the data, and because of this personal data, sensitivities are getting bigger and bigger in all countries. And also it may introduce a synergy. For example, at the moment I'm making a study, I will share soon. It is about the languages spoken in the world. For example, English language. it is spoken in which countries, and what's the percentage of these countries in total, or language spoken in Portuguese language. For example, all Brazilians can follow the Portuguese language, or all Chile people can follow the Spanish language. So it might be very, very interesting to have, I mean, it shouldn't be as a problem of a certain zone of the world. It should be the problem of the whole world. So in all countries, we are after this. There are networks. They are trying to raise their voices, that kind of stuff. I mean, no need to make any big software infrastructure or collect data, etc. Even by a Facebook page, we can do it. That's the point, John. John, would you like to say anything?
No, that's good. Thanks, Ali.
Oh, Pierre and Michel, maybe first Pierre. Pierre, please.
Yes. I understand your point about synergy. One of the problems we have in Canada is, first of all, the kind of basic income that we support in Canada is different from what's usually supported internationally. And we get a lot of criticism for that. The other thing is one of the things that I'm noticing is that there's a lot of resistance politically to basic income. The concept is viewed positively. Implementing it is always the problem. One of the ways that we hope that basic income will get adopted soon in Canada is as an extension of the COVID response, which is called the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, $2,000 a month to everyone who's qualified. Now, everyone qualified, that's of course not basic income, but it is individual, it is almost universal, and it's a step in the right direction. To get some program like that implemented as a first step towards basic income, I think is probably our best bet in Canada. To have it called basic income may not be even strategically a good idea. So you have to explain to people, no, this is not basic income. We're not giving away free money. We're just continuing the emergency funds, and we're demonstrating at the same time that that as we all agree, basic income is a lot better than no basic income. So it basically demonstrates itself. You don't even have to call it basic income. You could call it a Canada dividend or something like that. Something that would appeal to nationalists and would differentiate us from everybody else. So that's my thoughts on synergy, which I hope I'm not throwing cold water on your idea, but that's how I see it from locally. You know, how a support from outside would contribute.
Thank you, Pierre. In fact, there are very different basic income understandings in different countries. So we don't want to have a fixed text, and we don't want to have people to be for this text. So there might be similar campaigns, but at the end of the day, our target is to have this on the table as a discussion issue for the whole society. It may be citizens' basic income, it may be universal basic income, or it may be citizens' dividend, but something similar. So people will start thinking about this. When they start discussing and thinking, maybe they will come to a point. One thing I would like to make clear also that they will be all campaigns, separate campaigns in each country. There will not be a central campaign. I mean, we are not targeting something like this. So our friends from one country will do their own campaign using their own tool, maybe change.org or maybe Facebook. I mean, it is their choice, and there will not be anything central. But the discussions, the campaign, maybe at the same time. Pardon, hello?
Sorry.
Ah, okay. Michelle and Ingun, we can continue like this maybe. Dear Michelle?
Okay. No, I would just like to say that's precisely what's been happening in Italy from a long time ago now. That's because basically a part of the one of the political party that's in the government now declared to be in favor of the basic income, which was theoretically the very same basic income we were talking about, but then because of a political compromise to now to be in a very different form. What it is now, the citizen income that is currently in place now, it's more of a minimum guaranteed income scheme, as you may all know. So basically, two separate movements are currently going on in Italy. The European one, the one we are talking about now, and another one that is trying to transform the citizens' income in Italy into a full-fledged basic income from a national perspective. What I'm like in countries which are in the same situation, I mean, where politicians are already have shown a partial opening to a concept of the basic income, another movement, a separate opinion movement in the fashion of the European ECI one might make a lot of sense. In the light of this, I also prepare a set of tools that allow for a synchronized communication, like a countdown for the ACI that can be copied for a national income movement. And I'm like to share my toolbox for anyone who's interested now and after the meeting. And I will hold a presentation rather soon about over the next in a couple of weeks from now. That's what I want to say. That's it.
Thank you, Michelle. It will be very interesting. I know that you have a lot of campaigning tools and materials, and you would like to present and share. Maybe we can do it in the first meeting of August. 11th. Maybe we can do this in the first meeting of August, 11th of August.
In the first meeting of August, it's scheduled a full-fledged presentation. I can speak verbally now for those who are interested. Basically, I didn't have a lot of time to make a manual post one by one on the social networks because I run a business that is deemed essential by the government. So I had no social distancing and I have not very much time. So I used a lot. So I made an intensive tools of online scheduling plan. And they are turned out to be very good. By now, they just a countdown, and so the content will be richer by adding a series of videos from basic income quotes and basic income short videos. They will be like every day. The subscribers to the groups I manage will have a video peel of 1 minute that are easy to watch and spread, and that should also act as a cultural impulse. It started slowly, but day by day it's gaining more and more traction. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It will be an interesting presentation on 11th of August. Dear Ingun, would you like to say? Right now, Ingun, her camera is closed.
Can I talk a bit?
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, my English is very rusty, and, but in Brazil, which is very, very complicated about communication, everything. But in the other hand, the basic income now is exactly in this moment is the population is very in favor. Many people in Brazil, many groups started in Facebook, and others started to support the basic income because the problem is not have a big union, have a big dispute, political dispute between the left and the rights, because the government now is put the basic income starts to in the Congress, and the government have a struggle, fighting to become who is the father of the proposal. Now it have one level of fighting is a political needed to create one big coalition in Brazil, and then for this to create this communication, because even in the left have a big fight, because the campaign already started, even in the problem in the pandemic, ignored the pandemic and started to fight who is the father, because the only way the government stay don't receive one don't falling down is we distribute money for using one similar to one basic income. It's not exactly one basic income. Call that is basic income, but it's not exactly that, but works like it's very important. Have a lot of problems with the system, not this emergential cash transfer, and now many forces, even people never not only in discussion but in the designs of the cash transfer in the federal government. At the moment, the great challenge is create one big coalition, because is a fight not only on the communication in the level of directly from the people, but have a big players, political players, and even church enter now, the Confederation of the Bishops, and have created a huge alliance coalition in Brazil to everybody talking in the same direction to support it. This is a very important created this, because the strategy that people use in this moment is created one using this is around the world, I know, is the culture of cancel. And when someone appears, others immediately attack this group to destroy, and created one. In Brazil, this moment, everybody destroy everybody. Nobody started to grow together. It started to it's not like a cannibalism culture. Is one of the reasons, because Brazil it's very difficult to create it, to react it even for the pandemic. It's not created one, have a pacify to work together, and it's very difficult even because it's impossible. Pacify is now a particular period, because the government used this situation for one kind of strategy to government, created divisions between the society. And the society in this moment is very broken and divided. many people now in the poor places not supported exactly the basic income, supported the figure of the president of Bolsonaro. Now the figure of Lula, the father of the other program, cash transfers. Now Bolsonaro started to take it, devorar, eating the program. It's like a name, and they took it this for your personality. It is a part of culture of Brazil, it started with market, political market. It's a very important to create this communication of try to for on a universal basic income for bring for the society, for create a grand movement, even for the pacify the society, because the problem is a very huge, and the collect this, even when the problem now, the president now is sent for the Tribunal of Haia for genocide and the others. Is a many sectors of the society now is fighting one each other, and the very important studies. This is for us to talk about basic income, reading data, how the pandemic impacted the programs, not only the program, the small project we have, but other programs, the cash transfers, even the Bolsa Familia and this emergencia, and what happened in the society, and the very, very rich is now not so touched by the disease, by the pandemic, and the very poor now start to stopping to work. Now have for the precariat starts to stop to send the food, and the isolation of the society. So is a moment very, very near. Even the military sometimes say in terms talk about the civil war. Is not, I believe, is not true. Is a kind of a way to create this terror, but this is a very challenge to create one communication in the Brazil in this moment. I believe in others, because the population now demands these movements about decolonization around the world, demands one position much more strong of all governments and the companies in general. Now change your position. I believe it's very possible. I believe it is create one strong communication, and but if I have one big coalition of the internal players and create this bridges around the world for focus that in peace, peacify, and the others. The economics is very important, but one communication brings the basic income two for union, peace, and the democracy is very connected from these conceptions of democracy, of the commons, because this fight for the minerals, for the nature, is behind of this war. The world is in this moment for a war of information or disinformation. I don't know. This is very important, make this plan of communication. If this in this moment it's possible to create one plan, and for who is, I believe not us, it's possible to use the needed be a one struggle collective inside the outside to make this calling. I believe in this moment was a call. It's a call for war-based income around the world, because the people is much reactive for the COVID, and I share one fear. When the COVID started to slow down, the people get out more easy. Okay, now become the old, and forget it. It's not one truly learning response for the basic income. I'm staying in 10 years talk to the people for let's do it. It's a governments and the other players, and I share this feedback to all. And this moment is very important to give this calling, one calling for not only action, but for one action for rights, but one for the responsibility from the one position more from the earth. I believe these the earth and humanity not concentrated only in the national positions, because if go in this direction for give the strong forces from the one problem in the America and America in general, now not only in North America but in South America, the forces now America now has become isolated from the world, and wrong that from the history. I believe it, in Brazil, sure, totally sure this is one very sad moment, and I believe it is very important. One message: the basic income and democracy, and from the people is very important. Stay together, because is a very powerful, not only tool, but a law. A law belongs to the people. This is a very important. This approach. It's not one mechanism from, and it's not only stay in the hands of governments. It's very important to stay in the hands of the people. This approach of the basic income is allow and stay in the new social contracts. It's I believe it's one demand to make it not only for government but for the organization of national United. It's very important, because make pressure, like the people now make pressure in the governments together, not asking for it. It's on demand for it, not put in this position, because if you don't do with that, the history and the people cobrar, charge us for that. I believe it. Is that my position and my thoughts and my small contribution? It's much more feelings. Sorry about that. Feelings, not exactly thoughts.
Dear Marcus, I have a few questions to you, but let's hear other friends if they would like to contribute or ask questions. Dear friends, would you like to say anything or add anything? Oh, Christine, please.
Hi, I would just say that I think I agree with Barb on the issue of the political resistance. At least in Norway, there's a lot of political resistance, and so I think ideally, although I really support the proposal overall, I think ideally we would need something a little bit more specific, such as a concrete model, for instance, to kind of accommodate those that have a lot of economic feasibility questions and overall like political resistance. So I think something a little bit more concrete would ideally be preferred and a little bit more effective. But if we did the proposal as you suggested, to have a more kind of general campaign to spread awareness, I think I would at least want perhaps some of the most common features or some like features that would be common to all of the models that are or all the texts that are given to all the countries, to have some sort of features that bind the campaign together, and also to have a very specific time frame for it, so that there is a clear ending point.
Thank you, Kristen. I would like to say a few words, but maybe just after all of our friends. Any other friends who would like to? Okay, may I use a few minutes, especially regarding Marcus' presentation. In my country, we have a big problem. We have a democracy problem, and we have enough resources to fund a universal basic income. But the problem is, they don't want, I mean, the leading or governing parties do not want to have a basic income concept, a constitutional right concept, but they prefer to have it like a gesture model. So,
like a what?
Gesture.
Ah.
Gesture, you see? So they provide to certain people, but if they can also, how I can say, check whether they are supporting them or not. So it's becoming like a kind of barter model. Okay, if you support me, I will give you some support to survive. So that's why it is not a healthy democracy. So my point is, if the people do not have economical independency, then within this set or within this country, we cannot have a healthy democracy practice. So this is very, very important from our point here in Turkey. Secondly, regarding Marcus' points, there are some similarities too with our case. But my point is, I didn't say that we can have a uniform text and we will try to collect signatures all around the world for the same text. I just try to say that if you can say that, okay, in many countries, people are discussing this issue, they are campaigning for 1 year period and they are doing some integrated events, it might be interesting. And at the moment, 27 countries doing something like this. Why not to do something in parallel with them, in a synchronized way? Because I know there's a huge interaction between. For example, I talked to Bruna, she's here, but maybe she...
Yes.
Bruna, are you here?
Yes, I'm here with Marcus, the same screen.
Okay, but you are muted, and so you are talking from Marcus. Okay, that's great.
Yes.
I mean, my point was, for example, there are 24 different languages in this ECI campaign. So why not to use this many materials produced during this campaign? Let's say the Portuguese materials, we can use it in Brazil, or English materials, we can use somewhere else. I mean, there's a huge potential. We can, how I can say, like popcorns, we can expand it, and expand it. And the winds are blowing from our side. So we have to move, we have to go. It's not easy to tell all this in English, but at the end of the day, it's not my mother tongue. But the idea is there's a huge potential, and why not utilize it? We are not talking about a central campaign, all will be at different countries, but we are not talking about a fixed single text or fixed single UBI definition. Maybe we should not even define the UBI within the campaign because there are different understandings. Sometimes I remember during the UN General Assemblies, we are having very, very long discussions for one single word in the definition of basic income. So even within us, we do not have a agreed concept. But the issue is, let's make it like a popcorn and utilize this pandemic period and make people aware of it and blah, blah, blah. Thank you. Bruna, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I also like a lot of this. I think it's giving my microphone. Sorry. I think this is a very good idea. I totally agree with this synergy to do all the countries in the same time. I think that can be a very good communication tool for the basic income. And of course, each country is different in situations and everything, but it's very important to have this union around the world so we can be more stronger and effective, the movement. Né? It's very cosmopolitan. It's not only my country, your country, it's the whole planet. It's more cosmopolitan. So I think this is a good idea to do, and you can count with us here in Brazil to do that. We totally support this.
Thank you, Bruna. Christine, may I ask you a question? Unfortunately, Ingun had to left. We had discussed with her several times in the past while developing this ECI campaign under the umbrella of UBI, I mean, Universal Basic Income Europe. And you are not also a part of EU. Do you think it might be an interesting idea to have a very modest zero-cost campaign in Norway, and in the meantime, you can share some Norwegian content. Also, you can share some international content from the ECI campaign or from other campaigns, etc. Don't you think that it's a good time to be a part of a synchronized, international synchronized campaign? So if there are 27 countries already running for a specific target, and there are, at the moment, I think there are 5 more who said that they are positive regarding such a campaign. So what do you think? Don't you think that it might be interesting activity for you and your friends in Norway?
Yeah, I mean, I am very positive to the idea, and like we would probably also like be a part of that. I was just raising the point that I know that in Norway there's a lot of questions relating to the feasibility of it. So I think it would be kind of the more specific you could be especially in terms of financing, that would be more impactful. Because like we get these questions quite a lot. So I think proposing something without having a clear idea or proposal might be too vague for a lot of people, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it or we wouldn't support it or anything. Like I said, like I'm very positive to the idea. I'm just raising that as a concern.
You are right, but the point is, maybe you can, in your campaign, you can say that, okay, we better discuss this. Maybe not propose UBI, but propose we better discuss UBI. And maybe during these discussions, you can figure out the feasibility concept. Because in some countries, maybe we can talk about poverty and other similar issues, or corruption, whatever. But in some countries, we can talk about the creativity, environment. I mean, UBI has different perspectives and different positive contributions. So even if in your country, within this menu of discussion points, arguments, you can choose which are appropriate and you can use them. And you don't have to have the full solution, full feasibility. Maybe you can say, okay, we are proposing to work for the feasibility. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, I would say like there's definitely been more interest after the Corona crisis. So we have a good traction because of that. And I think it has also kind of, because so we have this very extensive welfare system from before, which I think a lot of people think function properly at all times. And I think now in Corona, a lot of people have discovered that that isn't the case necessarily, and that there are a lot of holes you can fall through. So yeah, definitely that is something that we could raise and kind of. But I also had a question regarding the campaign, because the EU initiative is going forward from September onwards. So would this campaign only be for the non-EU countries as an addition?
No. It will not be a single campaign. There is a campaign for the EU area. So 27 countries are doing this. They are separate. And also in another country, another campaign may start, another campaign may start. They are all independent countries in each country, and they have their own tools, they have their own networks, they have their own data, they have their own methodology, their own decisions. So they are all independent. Maybe, let's say there are 200 countries in the world, 27 is together having one campaign, but the remaining 173 may have 173 different campaigns.
Yeah, but so all the campaigns you're talking about, these initiatives, they're all non-EU countries, right?
Yes.
So for the EU countries, they wouldn't have a double campaign.
Yeah, EU is already doing something. They are already doing their campaign.
Because of the initiative,
as I
right?
mentioned earlier, hi Christine, this is Helmer from Vienna. We are doing a national campaign besides the European campaign, also with different approaches regarding how to talk about the amount or stuff like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an extra effort.
Dear Hanno, but in the ECI campaign, you have the breakdown of each country one by one. So we can consider them as 27 independent campaigns in 27 countries too, technically.
Sure.
Peter, I'm sorry, I just saw.
Yeah, no, I just, Christine and I have been having a side conversation in here, and she mentioned that the financial feasibility, and we're talking about the website that shows people how they are individually affected. It's not a massive undertaking. There's probably 20 measures or so that we could get it down to for each country. So Helmo will be able to have an idea about this as well. I mean, the measures are standard for each country. We can put this together for other nations without a humongous amount of work. I know Norway's got a very large fund. The universal basic income, of course, makes sure there's no holes in your social fabric. Everybody gets this money, so it answers the questions of the need that we have during the pandemic. I just wanted to mention that the website is available. It's free. I'll just pass it on to anybody that wants to do this thing in any country that it just shows people how they'll be personally affected by UBI in the different funding methods. I talked this through in Germany when I was over there. Most people know how much income tax they pay in a country. They get it at the end of the year. They get a summary. This takes away all of the complications from having to learn each nation's income tax structure. So it really becomes an easy process, and really all you need is the financials for each country to be able to find what their social costs are and such. Just wanted to mention it because it was a subtext that we were going through at the time. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Christine, I don't want to insist, but my point is, for example, if there is such a campaign and if there is a certain number of people for UBI in Norway area, maybe some people, academicians in the departments of economics, etc., will start trying to figure out how it can be financed. Maybe they will have some students with master's degree or PhD students as a part of the project. Maybe they will try to figure out a model to finance it, etc., etc. So it may create too many opportunities. And at the end of the day, it's activism, I mean, for UBI.
Yeah, we had a campaign in so at the start of Corona with a specific something that we suggested in March, I think it was. So that, yeah, I mean, I would get on board if we have such a campaign, of course. I was just kind of raising the difficulties in Norway with regards to getting support for it, simply because we get a lot of questions about that. But I was also wondering about the time frame. So what roughly time frame, what was you?
Time frame, some of our friends say that it's quite short notice, but the ECI will start on 25th. For example, we discussed with our friends and we said we better start on unofficially on 12th of September because 12th of September is the beginning of the basic income week. And we better also capture a certain number of people during this week. But officially, we better start on 25th of September. And let's have it for 1 year. During that 1 year, we do as much as we can. At the end of the day, we are for UBI and we have to do something. So, by the way, I have to tell more details maybe. Helma knows there are a huge number of people who are from Turkey originally and who are living in EU area too. Some of them are citizens there, some of them have relatives in Turkey. So even during that period, we may create some additional synergy too. So they are in close connection, so maybe they can influence each other while receiving somebody for the campaign in Turkey. Maybe her or his relatives may also sign the other one, or vice versa. So interesting things may happen if we can synchronize everything. So 25th of September, official start, let's say, but we can start on 12th of September, which is the beginning of the basic income week. And you know, there is 19th of September, the basic income march.
So a year-ish. What was the initial suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, at UNT, mostly it will be in the web environment. So we can start it and we try to promote it as much as we can. I'm sure we will be successful, especially if there will be a second wave of coronavirus. I don't know whether the first wave is finished or not, but they consider that it's finished. If there will be a second wave, I mean, things are changing very, very quickly, and the behaviors of people are changing also. Consumption decisions are changing. Now in Turkey, most of the people are doing digital banking. I mean, maybe normally it should take 3-4 years to come to this level, but it took maybe 3-4 days. Suddenly, everybody started to be doing their work through internet. Let's do like this. If you agree, I'm not finished yet, but we are preparing a presentation. Let me share this in the email group. I hope you are a member there too. You are, I guess. Okay, that's great. And then we better discuss maybe together with Ingun and together with Gerdur and the other friends. Okay. Helma, would you like to say anything?
I always like to say anything. Anything.
That's great of yours. Other friends, they are okay. The cameras are closed, so we can finish today's labor if you like. Thank you very much for joining, and we will be in contact.
Thanks, Ali, for having us.
Yeah,
Most
thanks
my pleasure. I'm
for
just
everything. It's been really, really interesting to finally be able to join. I've gotten the emails for quite some time, but I tend to have meetings in Tuesdays afternoons. So I finally now like they were finished early today.
Is this your first time in these meetings?
Yeah, like I typically have like my supervisor meetings on Tuesdays.
Oh, because there were very interesting presentations in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it on YouTube as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you all then. Hope to see you.
Thank you.
It's always great to see the family growing from Norway to New Zealand, from Canada to India. This is so great. Ali, you're a tremendous connector to all of us.
No, I'm just trying to make things easy. The presentation of Hannes was very good, and it will be a big infrastructure. Then we will be able to develop new superstructure projects on top of it.
Yeah, you're actually building the basic income Earth network.
No, Helmut, the issue is there are some difficulties regarding yen. First one is, you know, I'm also part of BN, but it moved from Brussels to UK. And then they said it has to be a legal entity at the end of the day, okay? And they said the best option is to make it an educational charity. Then very quickly they made the decision and they make it educational charity. And then they said, as an educational charity, we cannot do activism, we cannot do anything related with the politics. So the authorities in UK will follow us, blah, blah, blah. So BN become very passive. And also the executive committee was quite against such activities. I don't know why. For example, when we started the first meeting in April, we want them to join and we want them to invite the others. We said, no, we cannot invite anybody. But why you are here? I mean, why we are here? We are members. I don't know, but I mean, the education charity status, I don't think that it's an excuse. They don't want to be part of the activism, or, for example,
I don't think they ever were. You know, there is a historical part of the BN that they were educational, and it's a pretty intellectual sort of group. You know, I offered for it to be set up in New Zealand because it's very easy to set up a charity here, and they really struggled to get that through over there. They were knocked back a couple of times with their application, and they had to specify and limit their understanding of themselves to meet the requirements. And I think it's a bit of a problem as well. They are hampered by not wanting to go one way or any other way. They have to broaden their scope, and I understand why those things are there, but they limit their ability to recognize that there is a best way of doing something. And to me, it's a ridiculousness, and it hampers. So I've found it a real struggle. I feel like screaming in some of these meetings, the ones that we sit down and talk about. We discover these things and we say, look, here it is. It's all set out. It's all clear. Where's the support? We've discovered something here. We know what the best way of doing something is, and at the end, the message is getting lost. I find it very frustrating. This whole setup. It's more of an aggravation. It is making me uncomfortable with the efforts that I put into this organisation. It's been a real struggle for me. It really has.
Pardon, Helmut?
Luckily, we have folks like Ali doing the valuable work.
Dear Helmut, I have two questions to Peter, but the first one is for you too, or for all of us. BN is Basic Income Earth Network, right? Okay. What are networks for? They should introduce mechanisms for the communication of their members.
Yeah.
But what I understand is that VN do not want her members to be in communication. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And
very interesting. Yeah.
Second question to Peter. Peter, do you think you and your network can organize something starting with 25th, officially, maybe unofficially by 12th of September? Why not? You can promote your concept and at least you can start. I mean, maybe small group, maybe small numbers, but
my hope is that we can get this. I've pinned all my hopes on this Facebook post to get the information out, and it needs to be shared globally. Now I've done the work, I've done the numbers, I've done 2 years of my full-time efforts into this. $30,000 of my money has gone into the exercise. It's cost me the relationship with the mother of my children after spending this money and the time in this thing. The personal cost is getting very large, Ali, and I'm nearly ready to finish my activism work on the basic income. This is my my last throw of the dice, and frankly, I haven't even received a help on the translation. Look, I'll put a European version on the Facebook page, which covers Austria, Germany, France, the top rank one, and make a plea for sharing through the Facebook page. And if it takes off, it takes off. And if it doesn't, then look, I've done everything that I can do. If there's no support, or if the attitudes worldwide against a VAT tax is such that we can't get any headway, to me the websites were the answer. Sorry, Ali. Look, I have to be clear to myself in my calculations. I'm not wrong with what I'm saying. We know what the best way to do this worldwide is. I can't say this clearly enough. I've proved it. It's in the numbers. It's in the work that I've done. I'll have one last chance at this thing. I'll do a European in English because I can't find a translator. I'll put it on Facebook. I'll share it. I'll tell the story as clearly as I can and pray that it gets shared worldwide. The website that I've been talking about, the My UBI website, compares every modeling function against every other one. It shows clearly what the best way to do it is.
But your website,
I can't do anything more. Sorry?
Let's discuss again. Not finish here. Thank you, dear friends.
All the best, everyone. Really good to see you, Helmo. All the best, mate.
On 11th,
nice meeting you.
Michelle will make an interesting presentation, the Italian friend. It will be interesting. I mean, very easy, very practical, and we can utilize it, I guess, very easily. Thank you very much to all of you. Hope to see you.
All the best, guys. Thanks, Ali.
Greetings.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Ciao.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are.